Live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast. I'm Ryan Spagnoli. Joined with me is Alex Barth. Barth, how we doing? We're watching from afar today, from
Yeah,
thousands and thousands of miles away.
just
It's
just a
it's
little
it's
bit of
different.
FOMO. It's okay. It's okay. Just
It's
a little bit.
different. It's different. You can't get the whole right. And I mean, obviously, we can tune in as much as you can send some text to see what's kind of going on. But I think to start the show, I think we should start with their roster moves, right? Because we had talked about this towards the end of last night's show a little bit, in terms of kind of not necessarily how they get to 80. We had, obviously, who was it? Langy and
Ronnie
somebody last night,
Perkins. Ronnie Perkins.
Perkins. Yeah, right. They didn't travel or
He
they
didn't
weren't out
travel,
there?
and now Longy's still on the team for now. They didn't move on from him. Perkins, and we can get into these probably a little bit here. Perkins wasn't there. Stuber, I mean, we didn't see him in the spring. Like he's I think a red shirt through and through.
Absolutely.
Perkins, I mean, it's like kind of shades of Anthony Jennings, except Anthony Jennings played a bit his first year. He was their second most used linebacker his first
Yeah.
year. Perkins is now going to go 2 years without playing a game. And for a top 100 pick, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what their plan is for him, right? They had this log jam at edge rusher for so long behind. They had those veterans, right? Kyle Van Jamie Collins, and they had this log jam of guys like Josh Uche, Chase Winovich, Anthony Jennings, Ronnie Perkins, and you're kind of starting to see that logjam get thinned out. And it seems like Jennings and Uche are the guys who are going to step up here and really win those snaps.
Yeah, and I kind of tweeted it too. Like it's not the bet. It's not good for Perkins, right? Because you kind of figured last year, they spent big money on Judon. They had an older team, right? They do it every year with one rookie. It just depends who, right?
Right.
Take some time into the system, kind of figure out how to be a pro, develop into your pro body, and then year two they kind of take off. We saw with Trey Flowers, right? Like the list kind of goes on and on. And you come into camp this year and you'd think, this guy's going to, not be an every down player, but somebody that can certainly help you, in spurts and in different situations. And he had not looked, he just kind of was out there at camp, never really popped, never really stood out. And now he's going to miss his second straight year. And I don't think he was battling much, right? It's one of those, kind of the Foxborough flu, everybody calls it.
Yeah.
But I do think, and I had tweeted it, there is some hope for him, right? Because we did see this with Anthony Jennings, and I know Jennings did play a little bit as a rookie, but that was a much different team. They had a ton of opt-outs. I feel like he was almost forced to. And then last year he was IR'd because they got all the opt-outs back in. They brought Collins and Van Noy and all these guys back, and now he's a huge piece of their defense. So I think, it's obviously not ideal. He spent a top 100 pick. I think, what did he go, 96 last year? Somebody
Yep.
that probably should be helping you by this point in his career. But, one of those things, right? Jennings popped. Uche has looked good. Judon's back, right? Like he's just further and further down the depth chart. And I don't know necessarily if there's room for him this year, right? So there's still some hope there, but all in all, it's not great to see from a top 100 pick just a year ago. Still has not played an NFL game.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of, you're right. It should be shocking. Maybe it's not as shocking because this is the way that, they've brought along a lot of guys slowly here in the last couple of years out of the draft. This is sort of what they do. But yeah, no, he's a guy. I mean, you now just kind of push to 2023. And by the way, if Anthony Jennings has a big season this year, get ready for, well, they did it with Jennings and it worked. So here comes Ronnie Perkins. He's going to be a big contributor. Like, get ready for that because that's coming.
Right. Oh, it certainly is. But I just think too, we kind of saw this coming when you kind of had to, that's a very competitive group. It seemingly always is on their teams, no matter how good that unit is. They usually have a really good front seven. So it's tough to
Right.
find snaps. But like I said, that's a guy who last year when they picked him, it was kind of a head scratcher, but at the same time, it was one of those best player available. This guy had fallen in the draft a little bit. Let's take a flyer on him. But I think regardless, that whole draft in a whole, they hit the nail on the head. Their first two picks were money, like absolute money, right? You can't hit all your picks. Even Mermondre was their fourth round pick. So
Right.
3 out of their first 4 last year are already immediate contributors, people that you're probably going to build around for the foreseeable future. It's tough. Beggars can't be choosers. That draft was really, really good up to this point. And I think, is the writing on the wall for Perkins? I guess we'll see. But like I said earlier, it's tough to see. But let's get into practice too.
Yep.
Like I said, we obviously aren't there. I'm not in Vegas. Neither is Barth. We're in the same location. But It looked like another day, a slow day for the offense. And from reading on it, it looked like when they were kind of going through that rut in the middle of practice, it was one of their worst that, everybody has seen all summer, which isn't a good sign because, like you said, me and Alex started doing this show about 2.5 weeks ago. The sky was falling. They couldn't even get aligned right. It was miscommunications, false starts, guys running the wrong routes, and they seemed to seemingly pick that up last week. They started to get a little bit more crisper, especially as the week got on. And I thought, other than the first two drives, it was great to see the ones kind of come out, march down the field and score on a nice ball from Jones. It looked much smoother. And they come out today and it looks like they took 2 steps back again.
Yeah, and I mean, what really worries you is the offensive line, right? Obviously, Mac didn't do well throwing the ball. I think there were like 4 or 5 drops, right, based on the report. So that's not great either. But I saw a stat that they tried to run in between the tackles 7 times in team drills today, and they got stuffed on 6 of them. I mean, that's just, you can't. That's not good enough. So again, I wasn't there, didn't see it, but just based on the reports and based on people I've talked to, it was more of the same of what was an issue early on in camp. The offensive line just can't get it going. When as is usually the case in football, by the way, when the offensive line doesn't get it going, everything else kind of falls apart behind that, right? So, was it the heat? Was it a couple days off? Was it Isaiah Wynn coming back because he practiced today for the first time in a couple of weeks? Probably a combination of those and other factors. The Raiders also, let's give the Raiders credit where it's due. Max Crosby, Chandler Jones. It's a hell of a defensive front, and they're going to get tested this week, the Patriots offense, with that front 7. But you hate to see it go backwards like that, especially when it really felt like they were starting to make progress.
Yeah, and we had said too, right? This is going to be a real test for them this week, right?
Right.
Carolina is Carolina. They're a bottom 3rd team in the league. I'd be surprised if they win 6 games. But like I said, it's good to see first live bullets versus other teams. He flew out here, and we talked about it yesterday. This is a big week for a lot of guys. I think not just a lot of guys, for their team in general, right? Because this is a team that spent a lot of money in the offseason, new coach, got the best wide receiver in football, who we'll get into him later because it looked like he torched them all day long.
Yeah.
A real test for this team, kind of to see where they match up in the AFC. And I know it's the first day, you're on enemy territory, right? They could, knowing Bill Belichick and his teams that he gets out there, they're going to bounce back and have a much better day tomorrow. But we're getting close to real football here, man. Like this is we're getting up to week 1. So they got to start putting their right foot forward and really building off this.
Well, I think, you mentioned bouncing back, right? This has kind of been the thread of the summer. And I don't know, I've said a number of times this summer where, it's a back and forth and you want to see if they'll bounce back tomorrow, and they haven't, talking about the Patriots offense. That's what we haven't seen. If they come back and bounce back tomorrow, that's really encouraging, because again, they just haven't been able to do that this summer. If they have another bad day, I think that's tremendously discouraging. So you're right. They've generally been good about that, but what was it, 12 days before we got to come on here and say, hey, look at the offense. They're moving the ball, right? Progress. They need to quickly turn around, which is something they haven't done yet this summer.
The biggest concern for me is a running game. And I know probably a lot of it alludes to their troubles and the new guys up front, but that's like an anchor of their team, an anchor of their offense, right? And I know Max in his 2nd year, and you got, improved skill positions and guys more comfortable in their system. But if you can't get the running game going, I don't know how you're going to get anything else going.
Yeah, again, that to me, people were talking about Mac. People were talking about, oh, well, the receivers can't get separation and this and that. And, is Ramondre Stevenson out of shape? No, it's the offensive line back. If the offensive line isn't there, it derails everything else. It's just the nature of football. That's not a Patriots specific problem. The problem with the Patriots is the offensive line is falling apart. But if it falls apart, the rest of the offense usually goes. That's across all 32 teams for however many years they've been playing the sport, right? So they've got to get it figured out up front. It's Matt Patricia and Billy Yates. They've got to get this thing locked down. David Andrews sounded frustrated after practice again today. We saw reports that Mac Jones was frustrated during practice. You just got to, and again, they were better. Somebody pointed out in the chat, they were better during 7-on-7s. That's even more evidence that this is what the problem is. So it's just a matter of getting that figured out up front.
And I was going to say, what is their issues? And you nailed it. It's up front, because I was going to say,
and specifically, it's the communication up front. It
is, because they're 7-on-7s, and even when we're down there, it's crisp. Like, the offense is moving. It's not a receiver problem. It's certainly not a quarterback problem. It's up front, and that might take them some time, but you'd think they'd be much better. And I do think they're much better than they were 2 weeks ago, right? But this stuff can't keep happening if they want to be a competitive team in a much better division this year. That's just the frustrating part. And like I said, their running game and their offensive line has been an anchor for them for so long. And it seems like those two can't get on the same page, which is frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something it's not, they have to fix it. It's not something they can work around. It either gets fixed or it doesn't.
And the other thing too, kind of going on to the defense, we had spent, and me too, spent a while on Jalen Mills, and now he's ready for the challenge and it looks much better. And, everybody has bad days, and he's going against the best receiver in football. I think somebody that's probably the best we've seen in a long time. He's certainly top 5, I think, in the last 10 years. That guy just has a knack for getting open, so good at the line of scrimmage, as just a variety of release packages that just he's so good. And Devonte Adams made Jalen Mills look like a rookie today. It seemed like he had like three catches on him, toasted him too, made a sweet one-handed grab over him. I mean, that stuff's gonna happen. But I think if you're gonna be a number one corner for this team, you're gonna get those guys, right? You look at the division. You got Tyreek Hill or whoever's, I mean, they could put a slot guy, a more speedy guy on him. But Stephon Diggs, right? Like Devonte Adams is on their schedule. Deontay Johnson, Chase, right? Like I could go on. Jamar Chase, like these guys, you're going to face number one receivers.
They need a legit corner. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They need a legit corner, and I think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, finish your point. I thought you were wrapping.
No, I just think he's looked really good, and I think he's much better than last year. And he is their number one corner because I don't really think there's anybody else. So like that's your guy, and unless they add someone really late here, which I don't even know if it'd make that much of a difference in a short term. This is your guy that's lining up across number one receivers every single week.
Well, I mean, they're not going to add somebody better. It's just those players don't get moved this time of year, right? This is the group. They could add depth. They could add on the edges, but Jalen Mills is going to be their number one corner this year. And then let's put this into context, right? Devonte Adams might be the best, X receiver in the NFL. Like who else is in that discussion right now? Like
the best in the league to me. I don't
right.
Really
like
know.
Tyreek Hill's Tyreek Hill's a slot. I think Tyreek Hill's a tremendous player too, but Tyreek Hill's a slot, or he's not like a traditional X, right? Your big body outside prototype wide receiver. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but
I mean Jefferson, but he kind of lines up everywhere.
Not Jefferson, maybe Mike Evans, but like I some people might say Evans. I would still take Adams personally over Evans. Sure. Anyway. So it's not like Jalen Mills got burnt by some guy just off the bus, right? This is probably, DeAndre Hopkins is who I was thinking of. Thank you. But I you know what? At this point, I think I'd still go Adams, but that's close. That's a totally fair debate. But this is and Hopkins actually is on the Patriots schedule. So we'll see that game. But this is as tough a test as Jalen Mills is going to have to face this year. He didn't exactly pass it, but you couldn't have expected him to come out and blank Devonte Adams. If he'd done that, we'd probably be on here talking about, defensive player of the year. We'd be on here talking about Steph Gilmore. We're obviously not doing that. But I think it does kind of remind us that, this is a different situation at corner than it's been in the past for the Patriots. You don't have that guarantee on the outside, whether it's, you go all the way back to Revis and Gilmore and Jackson, and Malcolm Butler was in there for a year. It's not necessarily that they're going to really need him to kind of play above his level. And I think today showed that. Now, something I talked about with Matt Dolph on my Sports Hub podcast, which you can find now, 985thesportshub.com. Do they go back to that style of, and look, you're not game planning for joint practice. They're probably not going to game plan for the game, but hypothetically, if this was like a regular season game, right? Would it have been Mills on Adams, or would they put Mills on Renfro or whoever the second receiver is, and then and I know this kind of sounds scary, right? Or Terrence Mitchell and safety help, or whoever on Adams. Like, is that how they'd approach it? So maybe there's more of that this year without that true lockdown like Mills, but it was kind of a reminder that, hey, this isn't, what it's been the last couple of years at the corner position.
And it's been their biggest question, I think, coming into the year, right? Like you said, they've had number one corners for seems like so long, at least as long as I've been really, following and covering the team. And this year, I think that group is coming into camp, it's a lot better than I think anybody would have expected it. But at the same time, like you said, this isn't the same guy we're used to over there, whether it's 24 or 27, right? Like guys like that, no, we're just going to take this part of the field and completely eliminate it, and we don't need help, right? So, I think, like you said, the safeties will help. They got a veteran group there, guys that have played a lot of snaps. I mean, McCourty's super good at that. You got guys like Duggar and Phillips and Adrian Jabril Peppers, they'll be able to figure it out in terms of, we got a week to figure out a scheme to kind of slow this guy down. You're not going to stop Devonte Adams. Like, he's going to get his 8 catches, but it's limiting those big plays, limiting him down the field where, guys will, struggle. But Alex, before we get into it, I wanted to tell you all about our LinkedIn talent solutions. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small businesses fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Like I said yesterday, everybody knows this is a kind of another job for me. I use LinkedIn big time. I'm a big networker. Everybody knows in this day and age, social media is huge. What better way to use LinkedIn to kind of, network yourself and find your next gig? You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring for your network. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat to post your job for free. Alex, let's get into a little bit more about the offense. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but it's kind of tough with us not being
We're
there.
going like biggest storyline down. It's not necessarily offense to defense. It's,
I
I
don't
think
know
the
if you
biggest
had
storyline was
anything
the
in terms of
offense.
a bigger storyline. I thought the offense struggling was obviously huge.
That was,
kinda,
those were the big 2 takeaways, I think.
yeah, and like I said, it's tougher without us down there. You can only go off so much what you read, but I just think too, and I said it earlier, like this is you think about the AFC West, like it's the Chiefs and the Chargers for me are the top tier. Like those 2 teams are going to be in it in the end. I like the Chargers as like an AFC sleeper. I think that team is loaded. Justin Herbert's so good. They got the pieces on defense now. I know Jackson did go down though today, had ankle surgery. He's out 2 to 3 months, they said. So, I mean, that's tough for them.
Was it 2 to 3 months? I saw from now. Okay.
Yes.
I was thinking like weeks in the season is what I saw. But
No,
yeah,
so
we're a couple
he's
weeks out.
probably
That
going to
makes
get
sense.
IR'd
Okay.
at least. Yeah, definitely get IR'd.
Yeah, you'd think so. 4 weeks.
But when you look at it, like I said, the AFC West, it's those 2 teams. And I know we're jumping all over the place, but it's kind of what we got to do. These are the teams you're fighting for a wild card spot, in my opinion, right? The Raiders could catch the league by storm, and Josh McDaniels could do a fantastic job. They could win the AFC West. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams, with how much talent they have, wins the division. But I just think basing it off last year, you kind of have to put the Raiders in that 3-4 range, but they're still going to probably win 9-10 games and make the playoffs. And
Right.
these are the teams you're fighting for, assuming, you're fighting tooth and nail with the Dolphins for the 2 seed in a wild card spot.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. I think maybe people are a little too worked up over the AFC West just because they all have to play each other, right? Let's not forget that. Like if they all win 12 games, and you say, oh, those are all 12-win teams. All right, so then they're each beating each other once and then basically winning out. Like that's kind of what you're projecting there. But yeah, no, this is a good measuring stick. Even if the Raiders might be a little above the Patriots in terms of head-to-head for a playoff spot, like you're talking about, right? But who are you playing first round of the playoffs, right? It's a team like this. So, players have talked about that as well. They got to measure up and look. The team, you'd hope, the team that's out there right now is not the same team that's going to be out there in January. You'd hope that they grow and they develop and they get better at that point. And obviously the Raiders will too. But I think, you look at the moves the Patriots made this offseason, I think a lot of what they're banking on to improve this team is internal growth. Just young players getting better. Mac Jones, Christian Barmore, Kendrick Bourne, guys like that, right? There's a million more names are escaping me, but Kyle Duggar would be another big one. Yeah, this is the kind of team that they got to go punch to punch with. And it goes back to what I said before. Can they bounce back tomorrow? that's kind of the big question because it's what they haven't done all summer.
And yeah, I like I said, you don't want to jump too far down the rabbit hole with, joint practices and one day of struggling. But like we said earlier, I think this is a huge measuring stick for this team. So I don't know. I think in terms of the offense, that's going to take it's going to take longer than usual to figure out. I think this year with the problems they're having up front, if you're having those problems, it's going to affect everything. We're seeing it right now. You see it each week with these mediocre teams. But you have to hope that defense can hold up the first 6 to 8 weeks, really, until that offense hopefully starts clicking on all cylinders. And that might be a tough ask. I know their front seven's so good. We heard about it today. That was another thing.
So that's the one thing. Yeah, the front seven looked really good. They're going to kind of have to hang on that unit because it goes back to kind of something that's been a theme throughout camp, right? Was the Patriots run defense that bad, or was the defensive front that good? Maybe we undersold the defensive front a little bit. I think we're kind of seeing that here. Matthew Judon, according to the reports, was an absolute beast today, both against the run and the pass. So that might be the unit. That might be, if they're going to get through this early season and these growing pains, it's going to be those guys balling out.
Right. And like you said, I wanted to talk on it too. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Mac Wilson, right? Like I don't know what first team reps he got today, but that's a guy they need on the field. Like I don't know how much we'll see. I always say Tava. He's got a kind of Jelani
I thought it was Tavai until like last week. I'd heard other people say
just Tavaya. We're learning here,
yeah.
But I mean that's a piece that Wilson helps them on teams. Right, he's a big special team. Like there's no doubt he's going to have a role in this team.
They're both teams guys.
Yeah, but I think Tavaya is more of a teams guy than Wilson, right? Like, so that's another guy that you got to get going, find a way to find him on the field.
I mean, it's funny to me, right? Because I think I joked about this on the last show when we're covering the Patriots. It's kind of like playing detective. They're not going to tell us anything. We have to figure it all out ourselves. So they never tell us anything ever. And then Bill comes out last month and does that interview, or earlier this month, and does that interview about Jelani Tavai and like, oh, he's going to be a big contributor for us on all 4 downs. They finally tell us something. And we're all sitting here like, no, it can't be true. Just ignore that. It doesn't mean anything. Like, if he said that about any other player, right? If he came out and said, yeah, Ramondre is going to be a big part of what we do on all 4 downs, you'd be like, wow, Ramondre is going to have a huge role. And they're admitting it. That's crazy. For whatever reason, Jelani Tavai, he just tells us what his role is. And we're all still sitting here like,
right?
Should we put him on the practice squad? Yes or no, or on the roster projection? Yes or no. So he signed in September. And Bill talked about that this morning, that it's been very beneficial for him to be with the team throughout the full offseason, because he got cut by the Lions during final roster cuts last year. And then the Patriots signed him before week 1. And I think they had signed him. Yeah, they initially signed him to the practice squad and then signed him to a full contract in like October, November or something.
Right. And now, actually, let's get into that too, because you're a big roster projection guy. With the roster down to 80 players.
98.5thesportshub.com. I have one up right now. It's still new. It dropped on Monday. I'd call it new.
Let's did you have Perkins on there, or did you have him IR?
I did not. I had Perkins, and I think I specifically said Perkins is off, but he won't get cut. He'll be traded or IR'd. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, we figured Stuber too with their depth there, and
yeah,
he hasn't been on the field all spring. And I think Mike Reese had said it a few weeks ago. He had suffered something right after the draft that was going to keep him out. So I think they knew this was coming along. That's a guy I really liked. He had guard and tackle experience, late round pick out of Michigan. He did well at the Senior Bowl. That could be a guy you're hearing his name a little bit next year as a kind of a swing tackle or somebody that's adding guard depth in the middle, because I think that's their biggest thing too. Swing tackle is huge, but I think if you can somehow keep Wynn, right, and Brown plays up to his par and Kajus stays well, you got a decent little trio there of tackles. I think interior, you trade Shaq Mason, Tooney's gone, Karras is gone now. You bring in a first-round rookie, Cole Strange. You have James Ferentz playing in there, right? Like, they need some help in the interior going forward, not just in relation to Stuber, but I think this year too.
Yeah, and William Sherman's, they got a couple of these guys, William Sherman, who are like converted college tackles who are probably guards at the next level. Yeah, I think you look at their offensive line, right? Isaiah Wynn's in a contract year. We'll see if he's still here. He's got the trade rumors. Trent Brown's on a 2-year deal, but he just feels year to year, just given the nature of his injury history, right? And things like that. We don't quite know what Cole Strange is going to be. It, you know, what am I? Michael Onwenu, who's still like, he might be a tackle if Wynn
We have
leaves,
no
right?
idea. We have no
So
idea what
there's
their
going
what
to
their
be
combinations are going to be.
there's uncertainty up front. It's not just this year. There's uncertainty up front. It there will be spots to be won. You're right about that. There will be spots to be won.
Right. So, any surprise coming down the like? Let's see this. And I know you're not a big hot take guy.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. We'll be talking about this next week. This time it'll be the final 52-man
probably
roster,
a little
right?
later. Cuts are by 5, so probably a little later. But yeah,
right. But obviously, like they'll put Taekwon on. He'll likely go on IR. That'll bring somebody up. There's like little things like that. But anybody you're keeping an eye on over the next week or so that I don't want to say surprise cut because nothing necessarily surprises me, but somebody where you'd be like, really, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I just want to pull up the roster here to make sure I get everybody. So I'll start with this. I see a lot of people like the hot take, not hot is in like extreme, but like the popular take right now is Cody Davis is going to get cut because they have Brendan Schooler. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they would keep both. I think they like Davis. He's a leader on the team. His contract's a little tough to part ways with. I think people are writing off Cody Davis maybe a little too early. Some of like the bigger names, is JJ Taylor getting cut still a hot take? There's still people who think he's like the next big thing. I don't see it with him. And at this point, I feel like if it's not there,
it's not going to happen.
Right. It's not going to happen. So I mean, I don't know if he counts. I think on the defensive line, Henry Anderson's a guy, and I know he's gotten like first team reps.
That's a guy, man. Like he
feels
looks
like a
good.
Bubble guy, though.
I know, and every time he gets on the field, he does something well. Like that's a guy who's not going to make mistakes. You know exactly what you're going to get out of him. And last year he got hurt in camp, right? And they IR'd him, and he was done for the year. But that's such a tough position to crack. But he's looked good, man. Like that's a guy that can help them there, and as a depth player and a rotational guy.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. I just wonder his contract. Like they get a couple million if they part ways with him.
They need to save some for incentives, right?
Right. Could LeBron Ray give you those same reps for less money? And one other thing I'll point out too, and people should remember this if you're kind of playing along and doing your own roster projections. People say, oh, you cut this guy and you bring him back and it's fine, right? Oh, like Sam Roberts. People say, oh, well, Sam Roberts will get through waivers. They can cut Sam Roberts and bring him back to keep a guy like, the two I look at, right? LeBron Ray and Sam Roberts, the rookies, Carl Davis and Henry Anderson, the veterans. The important thing to remember, though, is so Davis and Henry are on one-year deals. Like when you cut somebody and bring them back, you still cut them. The contract goes, it's voided. So if you're going to cut Henry Anderson or Carl Davis and bring them back, you don't change much. The dollar amount might change a little bit. There's dead cap.
You're ultimately paying him more than you would have if he made the team.
Right. But it's probably going to be marginal. If you cut Sam Roberts, who was a draft pick, to bring him back on the practice squad or the roster, you throw away the 3 years of term. Remember, he's on a 4-year rookie contract. And you're not totally getting rid of him. He'd be a restricted free agent or an ERFA and all these weird things, but you're essentially going to need to continue to negotiate with him starting this offseason. So when you look at it, if Carl Davis is a guy they think they can get through waivers, and they think they can get LeBron Ray through too, but they only want to keep one initially, I think Ray or Roberts would get the edge there because, again, you don't just want to get rid of that rookie contract. So when you're talking about,
with Ray, like that's a guy coming from Alabama. He had production, but I think
he might be tough to get through.
Injury, like he's had a good camp. Like it's like kind of like, oh, okay, this, the red flags maybe we had on, XYZ aren't there anymore. So that's a guy that'll be tough.
And there's like another guy like this too. A lot of people said, oh, they'll cut Brian Hoyer to open up a spot and bring him back like they did last year, right? Hoyer's contract's different this year. They have like $2 million in dead cap if they do that. Plus, they then have to sign him to a new deal. They really got to be committed to that. If they cut Hoyer, he might just be gone. I just don't. His contract really, really would be tough.
And I don't know how much I like that this year. I know Max in his second year.
No, I agree with you.
A lot of young voices and inexperience in that room.
Not a great offensive line. So when you go through it, right, if you're looking for these guys, who can they part ways with and bring back, you got to look at the contract. That's a big part of it that I think people forget sometimes.
Right. So, anything else on today's practice? Like I said, it's tough for us. We're not out there. I wish I was, even though it seemed pretty hot. I guess that's the good thing. They play Miami week 1. We don't have to hear about, how they're out of
Right.
shape and they can't handle it. But they've been in the heat for a long time. So I guess that's the only positive we can take away from today, maybe. They're ready
And
for week 1 in
I don't want to
Miami.
hear wet heat, dry heat. It's all heat.
Yeah, for sure. But that's the first thing people look at when they're looking for an excuse as to why they struggle in
Right.
Miami. It's the heat. It's the heat. It's heat. The good thing is it's earlier in the year. They've been playing in it. But, yeah, I guess anything else on practice today you want to touch on? I know, like I said, it's tough for us to watch from afar and gather thoughts without seeing it with our naked eye.
Yeah, it sounded like Jabril Peppers was more involved. He's kind of been held back early on, maybe some injury stuff. I would love to see him be very involved in this defense. I think he has a ton of untapped potential. I know it hasn't necessarily been the start to his career many were expecting, but he's also been in two horrible environments. And those he was with that 0-16 Browns team that went 1-17 the next year, and then the Ben McAdoo Giants, right? Best season he had under Joe Judge was, and I know people may not be the biggest fans of Joe Judge, but that is pretty objectively the most stable environment he's ever been in. He had 90 tackle season. He was great. Named a team captain the next year. So it's good to see Peppers getting back out there. We don't know entirely why he's been held back. He is coming off a torn ACL. Is it related to that? Is there another injury at play here? But I have really high hopes for him. So seeing him more involved is encouraging.
For sure. No, and that's another guy. Like, do they think he's ready for game action? Is that a pup candidate? Is that,
Well,
he
he
did
can't.
tear it. I think it was week 3 of last
It
year.
was
So, and I know
early. No,
ACLs aren't, the 12 to 16 months anymore. These guys are coming back faster and faster. But is that another way to sneak a guy, not sneak a guy on, but create a role for somebody early on in the year to kind of, carve out a role for themselves later on, if that makes sense?
yeah, that could be if they ease him in. I don't think they'd put him on IR because I don't think
No.
it's that bad. Like he's been playing, but yeah, maybe like Joshua Bledsoe gets more snaps early on while
That's another
Peppers kind
guy,
of
man.
ramps
Like, I
back up.
wonder if they can get him through
See,
waivers.
I don't think they're considering cutting him. I think they really like him. I think he's on.
So who do you have for your safeties? Duggar, McCourty,
5. Duggar, McCourty, Phillips, Peppers, and Bledsoe.
and you have Schooler just off.
Schooler is the 54th player.
Wow. That'll be interesting. That's another guy I think
But he's a guy I think they can get through. Like, honestly, the only team I think might claim him is the Raiders.
The Raiders?
But the Raiders they got their own version of him. This kid named Isaiah, I think it's Pola Mao from USC. He's a UDFA this year as well. He was like a top 50 pick at one point, and then he missed the majority of the last 2 seasons with a shoulder injury. He's kind of their LeBron Ray too, in a way, but in the secondary. Like he's somebody, if he gets cut, and he's had a really good camp in Vegas, according to their writers. If he gets cut, like he's a guy I look at the Patriots maybe to target. So Schooler, I think they can get through. I think they'd be able to get him.
I mean,
through.
that's your Cody Davis replacement next year. Somebody like that role. Like we'll
Right.
blink and he'll be there for 10 years.
Oh,
like
of course.
Like that guy's a football player.
Yeah.
Anything with Jordan, and I'm asking you this because I didn't see much. Anything with little Jordan Humphrey and tight end today? Any more snaps there?
I didn't see too much of it. Again, I don't know that it's necessarily snaps at tight end as much as he's doing tight end things from a wide receiver position, right?
Right.
They're lining him up in the slot. He's crashing inside the block. So it definitely feels like it's still on the table. We'll see. And, Dalton Keene getting cut, and it does feel like they're trending towards a 2 tight end team.
Right. You want to do a Boss Sports Minute? I don't know if you have anything. I know the Kevin Durant news looks like it's over with.
Yeah, no, I actually got a quick Red Sox thought I can work in here. So I know the season's over, right? And we don't need to care about this team anymore, but you want to be excited about the future. Eric Hosmer gets hurt because, of course, he did. So they need a first baseman, right? Well, their 22-year-old 2018 first-round pick, by all accounts, is ready in Worcester, and instead they're calling up Franchy Cordero again. And there's this weird thing in baseball where if you wait to call guys up past a certain point, you get an extra year of term. Fine. They're past that point by now. I don't know what it is. Tristan Casas should be up, and here they go again, dinking around with the development of another promising prospect. It's annoying.
Didn't he miss a lot of time? Did he just get back?
He's
he had the ankle
supposedly
injury.
Healthy and good to go now. Like I'm okay. Like maybe I'm wrong. This is the reports I've read. So it sounds like he's good to go.
And looks like Jaylen Brown's staying. Hopefully his feelings aren't hurt. That was Kyrie stirring the pot, ruining things up here.
Oh, of course.
It was 100% was. There's no way Brad Stevens would do that his first year in, but that's pretty much. I don't have much. Red Sox is like they're done. It's football season. We're almost there. It'll be all football, and that'll be the talk of the town sooner rather than later, hopefully. So, we'll be back. I'll be out the next few days. Got a business trip to take care of. Barth will be on. We're gonna kind of handle it in. Barth will be we'll have to carry the weight more than usual, I think, this time.
I guess so.
Yeah, but we'll talk to you. Be sure to follow us, Ryan _Spags, Real Alex Barth. We will talk to you guys shortly.